Okay, so today we have with us one of my lovely colleagues, Alex Yaghil, who works with us as a senior project lead, and she's been working leading the EntreCoop project, all about putting the entrepreneurial into social economy based education around cooperatives. So I'm delighted that today she'll be sharing information about how they've done that, how they've actually adapted some of the work from EntreCompEdu into that project and tested it across a few different countries. And also share an opportunity as well, because they're still sort of looking at the online learning is still available. So this may be something of interest to you or your networks. Tatiana says hello from Slovenia. Hello. The country with the best logo, because there's love in the middle. Always nice when you see Slovenia on the promoting Slovenia with love in the middle. There we go. Right, I digress. I'm very good at it. But Alex, we're delighted that you're sharing the story of EntreCoop with us. So please, I'm not going to introduce you anymore. I'll leave that to yourself, and I'll rejoin and support whenever you ask me to.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm really pleased to be here because I've heard so much about you guys and about the EntreCompEdu project, but I haven't been involved as much as I would have liked. So thanks for having me. Basically, yes, today I'm going to dig into a little bit of cooperative entrepreneurial education and the work that we have been doing with various organizations in the EntreCoop project. And actually, one of my colleagues here, Apoa, has been involved with me. So please, Apoa, if you want to add into the discussion at any point, please just unmute or type. But just at the beginning, I thought I might just share a bit of a personal story, because I've been basically working with Bantani for a year or so. So I'm a little bit new to entrepreneurial education per se. But I'm also basically a freelance consultant, and I work on various social innovation projects, mainly European funded. And basically my journey towards social economy kind of started a while ago, but actually never started during my education. It started after. And nowadays you can see a few programs in higher education about social entrepreneurship, social business, social economy, cooperatives. By that time, I didn't. And to be honest, I stumbled upon the concept during an internship in a magazine on European issues. And then basically I went to work for Euclid Network, which is a European umbrella body for social entrepreneurship support organizations. Because I was quite fascinated by the area, by the sector, and I wanted to apply my knowledge of European funding and European issues. And basically during those years at Euclid Network for 5 years, I've worked with various social economy organizations, social enterprises, and I discovered a lot about the challenges they face to develop, to grow, but also to attract skills, to attract people, and to have the right training. And I also was quite impressed with the impact they have, because they are active in all sorts of sector, and they have impressive results in job creation or reduction of poverty, or dealing with waste management, or representation of vulnerable groups, sustainability, etc. And so today, I don't know how many dedicated courses there are out there. There are a few, and there are champions out there. Like I can think of a few we can mention, Utrecht University or ESSEC in Paris and others. But I think more importantly, there's a big challenge still to raise awareness across all levels of education and all sectors of education on the sector itself. And basically starting to work on entrepreneurial education and EntreComp, I started to see both sides of a coin, which is what is the add-on of EntreComp and entrepreneurial competences in that sector, but also what the principles of that sector can add to entrepreneurial education. And because I think you're all convinced, otherwise you wouldn't be here, that entrepreneurial mindsets and entrepreneurial skills is what we need to develop in citizens, and especially in young people. But I think we want to teach the skills for 21st century challenges, because there is sort of an emergency, right? The labor market is not what it used to be. The skills of tomorrow are going to be very different. The jobs are going to be very different. And then we have digitalization, we have climate change, we have poverty, food crisis. So the economy of tomorrow will look very different. And so the teaching of entrepreneurial skills has to, I think, evolve in that sense, because business as usual so far has not made us avoid this crisis, right? So that leads me to my quick presentation. Well, I hope quick. Feel free to interrupt or put questions in the chat, etc. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just a second. Let me know if it works. Does it work? Yes, cool, great. Okay, so yeah, just a few things I wanted to explore today with you, more like to spark discussion. So what is the social solidarity economy? What are cooperatives? What is their social impact? And why is this important for society, but also for educators, for young people, for students, for trainees, for learners, and potentially some little hints into how we can bring this into a classroom or training. But maybe we could start by me stop talking, and maybe some of you want to just say what they think, or what sparks when they think about the social economy or social entrepreneurship, social business, social impact, because I think these are very trendy words as well. But what do they mean for you? Maybe I don't mind if someone wants to unmute or put answers in the chat. I'm curious. Is there anyone who wants to? It's always hard to be the first one who takes the floor, but I'm sure you know each other by now, so it's easier for you than for me. Otherwise, if Ellen or Anna, you want to read me the answers, that's also fine.
For me, it's really the economy is about, it's about the social impact kind of sums it up for me. That's what you're seeking. It's, sometimes people call it sort of non-profit as well. That I don't agree with, because we run a non-profit and we need to make a profit in order to plow that back into the work we do. But we are creating social impact. That's always my focus when I think of social economy, social entrepreneurship. Having ideas, making social impact.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one, because you'll ask different people from different cultural backgrounds, they'll answer something different. And then if you take the legal aspect, I think it will be a bit different, et cetera, et cetera. And I totally agree. My point of view is that I'm looking at the end impact, the social impact. And yeah, social economy is probably a broader term that includes nonprofits, but also social enterprises, cooperatives, mutuals, etc. But they all have, or usually have, social impact at their core. If anyone else wants to contribute, let me know. Shall I move on?
I wonder, does everybody resonate? Does everybody recognize the term social entrepreneurship, social economy? I'm assuming everybody does, but it's called different things in different countries, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And social economy is not really a word we used to use in the UK, for example.
No.
Wissam, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really an interesting topic to talk about, and usually from my viewpoint, I do not prefer usually to add the word economy to the word social, because in the definition of entrepreneurship, we have social, economical, and cultural impacts of the value created by entrepreneurs. So economy is something we can say that is something different. Here we focus on the social impact in which people as groups feel the result of and the impact of the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial endeavors and activities. So it may, when we say economy, that means we are looking for the profits, we are looking for large numbers probably. But when we talk about social entrepreneurship and social impact, away from the word economy, we feel the impact on groups of people, sectors of certain societies, and so on. This is my just impression about the words that are in front of us right now.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think the word social economy or social and solidarity economy that is also there is something that the Southern European countries refer to as a sector, and it's very generic. But then, in the UK we talk about social business, and also all over you will talk about social enterprise. But you're right. I think one of the main thing that we're going to talk about here is cooperatives, and cooperatives have this thing that they kind of merge, they put on an equal stage, having a social impact, a core mission, and making profit. So maybe I can, move on to a proposal of definition. Of course, there are plenty out there, and they're all valid. But for example, Good Finance UK proposes this definition, which is very broad, that social impact is the effect on people and communities as a result of an action or inaction, activity, project, program, or policy. Sorry, there's an error here. But interestingly, the UN has a task force on social and solidarity economy. A lot of international organizations work on this topic, and even more so since COVID. But that's how they define the social and solidarity economy organizations. And you can find here the fact that you have, profit is there, as well as social objectives explicitly in the core mission of the organizations. And then you have various degree of democratic governance and others. Obviously, for sure, there are some organizations that would officially identify with those principles, but would not put them into practice. Similarly, you have organizations that don't identify as social enterprises, for example, but actually embrace these principles. So you have in the sector a lot of different types of organizations, and I'm sure a lot of you actually use them on a daily basis, maybe to buy food or to buy energy or for healthcare. And one of the type of organizations is cooperatives, which our project looked at, and they're probably the oldest type of social economy actor. And so this is the logo of our project, which actually is EntreCompEdu inspired. So here is, please have a look at our website. There's a lot of information on there. Probably later I'll play a little bit of a video which actually refers to EntreCompEdu, so you'll understand better why it was inspired by EntreCompEdu. Mainly what we have developed is a massive online course, a MOOC. So please have a look. It is for trainers who have a willingness to either understand, get familiar, or even apply principles of cooperative entrepreneurship with their learners. We also will have in the autumn a guide for educators to use the principles within their classroom, but also go a little bit beyond, because we've organized and tested our methodology within workshops. So we'll actually share the results in that guide. So yeah, I thought I would just talk a little bit about, as the title of this presentation was, about the values and the principles of cooperatives. And some of you might know that already, but there are universal values and principles of cooperatives. And these are the values of self-responsibility, democracy, mutuality, fairness, equality, and solidarity. But actually, a lot of cooperatives members also believe in ethical values such as social responsibility and their impact on the environment, but also on the community, simply on the community. And then you have the 7 basic universal principles. I'm not going to go over all of them, but interestingly, education, training, and information is a key one. Basically, cooperatives provide education to their members. They provide education and training to their managers, to their employees, but they also have a mission of informing the general public, and especially young people and policymakers around what is cooperatives and what is their mission. There's also an interesting one, which is cooperation between cooperatives, because it's the idea that we are stronger together, that is a cooperative movement. And the last one is concern from community. We've already talked about this, but cooperatives, they do work for within, with, and for the community where they're based, usually. Sorry, please feel free to interrupt me. Yeah, so this is the point where my colleague Megan should be able to launch a quick poll. Shall we go to the second one? This is the second. So if you can launch the second poll, Megan, please.
So in the first one, we had in the first question, we have 4% for option A, 12% for option B, and 20% for option C. And in the second question, we had 56% for option A, 33% for option B, and 11% for option C.
All right, well, let's see. There we go. So you did quite a good job, I think. So yes, 12% of people are members of a cooperative. There are 3 million cooperatives in the world, and additional fun fact, cooperatives provide jobs for 10% of the work, and employment opportunities for 10% of the working population, and that's according to the World Cooperative Monitor. It's quite good numbers, I'd say.
A lot. That is a lot.
Yeah. Cool. So I thought I'd maybe share quickly an example of a cooperative. Maybe some of you know it. It's quite big. It's a Spanish cooperative called Mondragon. It's a workers' cooperative, and it dominates the industrial production in the Basque region. It's interesting. This is the landing page of their website, and as soon as you enter, you can see that they put the values really big, and they add the values of innovation, social responsibility, and social transformation. Basically, this group, it's active in finance, in industry, in commerce, and in knowledge. And it's basically now made up of 96 independent cooperatives and more than 81,000 people. And it's the leading business group in the Basque Country, but it's also the 10th largest in Spain. But actually, there are loads of examples like this. And if you follow our MOOC, you'll get to know a lot more of different size, including one in Wales, which has been founded by no other than Ellen's brother, and provides renewable energy in the region where they're based, and also provides educational material and involves get involved with schools quite a lot, and it's really, really interesting to listen to them. So I would really encourage you to have a look at that. There are loads of examples in our MOOC. Sorry. So yeah, so we're talking about social impact, and strictly speaking, well, the impact of cooperatives is basically in 4 areas. Economically, they enable their members to learn new skills, so they improve the quality of their products. They increase the capital through the pooling of resources. They gain bargaining power through collective action, which leads us to the social impact. The social impact, which they're less likely to lay off workers because they're usually in times of crisis, because they're usually not going to delocalize. They're locally rooted. They give more market power to groups of people like small farmers or disadvantaged workers who would be at risk of social exclusion. Democratically, usually cooperative members learn by doing the principles of democratic governance, transparency, member participation. And of course, we've talked about it, community building, because cooperatives increase trust and solidarity. They basically enable their members to connect to issues that affect them on a daily basis where they live. So we come back to what we were discussing earlier, which is that they manage to align economic and social objectives. Any comment, please let me know. So then in the UCOOP project, we tried and explore why all of this was important for educators, for teachers, for trainers, and why it is important for their learners. And there are various things that came out. I think it's important to show that being an entrepreneur or being entrepreneurial can be done in various ways. And as EntreComp says and carries as a message. You can be entrepreneurial as a student, you can be as an employee, as a member of a family, as a citizen, a community member, but all of this can be done with a cooperative-based spirit. I think it's also important to show that business can be done differently. The model that this model really can inspire, and it's not that students have to become cooperativists tomorrow, but just to think about having a having a cooperative business mentality, or think about entrepreneurship and business in a different way. Very pragmatically, it can mean that you can start to rethink how schools are organized and managed. And there are lots of examples of that as well in the MOOC and out there of cooperative schools and governance model, which are inspired by the principles of cooperatives. And there's also the idea that students can think about collective action and social impact in a very concrete way. Also because the cooperative movement puts a lot of emphasis on education, and that educational principles and tools can be inspired by cooperativism. Yeah, so back to you. Maybe I'm happy if someone wants to take the floor or put some answers in the chat. For you, which cooperative value is easiest to transmit through your work to your students? And I've put them here, the various cooperative values. I'll give you a few seconds, sorry.
I think often young people that I work with are more vocal now about questioning fairness, and they're coming to understand that fairness and equality are very different things. And for a while, young people wanted everything to be equal, but they're understanding the term of equity now and fairness being linked, and that's a really nice thing to see. And they're sort of advocating that themselves now, that they understand the difference between the two, and why it's not always fair for everything to be equal. And that's, you know, children as young as 7 and 8 are picking up on that, and it's really inspiring. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I don't think I learned that difference before I was in, maybe high school. And yeah, that's really interesting. I think today we see a lot because of environmental activism as well. A lot of younger people questioning status quo, and that is, I think, going to feed into what we're talking about today very interestingly, because that's really nice to hear. I can read here most frequently social responsibility, democracy, social responsibility, self-responsibility. I don't know if anyone else wants to maybe give us a little bit of more information on why they think this is the easiest to talk about or foster with their students. Maybe Wisdom, because you talked about self-responsibility.
One of the things that I try to help my students with is the value creation main issue. So if they understand what their responsibility in the society and what the society may need or may have some issues that need particular attention, then I think they can create the value in this or in the field of concern that they are thinking of. So that's why I thought of the social and self-responsibility.
Yeah,
probably it helped in creating a better value after their graduation or during their projects that they are doing in different courses.
Right. You're right.
I think the challenging thing is you feel that these should all be in the kind of work that, you know, we're trying to create through entrepreneurial learning, through EntreComp. These should be in there. I mean, I've always had a focus on active citizenship. It's a very entrepreneurial process, and I'm very passionate about the opportunity of developing competences alongside these kind of activism and engagement. And this is where it's like, I hadn't come across the cooperative values, even though my brother's got 2 co-ops before this and being involved with U Co-op. And it was really very, very stark that that this should be a mainstream, really, because it's the sustainable development and mindset that we're talking about, that kind of citizenship mindset, the democratic mindset. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and what is interesting, I was listening recently to a professor in the University of Liège, I think, and he was talking about the challenges in bringing cooperative entrepreneurship learning into education. And what he was saying was that there's still a lack of institutional supports, basically, and momentum from decision makers, that there is there's still, he finds still unequal expectations of what entrepreneurship is between students and professors or lecturers or trainers that would like to bring about something different. And lastly, he was saying that there's little knowledge of the cooperative model or even of the social economy in general. So I'm really glad to hear that it's not always the case. I think here we have an audience that's kind of more aware, and I think it's probably changing, hopefully. But really, if you are keen to explore this with your students and you kind of wonder maybe where to start, really have a look at the MOOC, have a look at the tools that we've developed, because they are dedicated modules to give you concrete practices. So today I'm not going to go into too much detail. I mean, I'm going to brush upon it. We can have discussions, but have a look at the MOOC as well. So I'm going to switch. Yeah, so this might sound very familiar to a lot of you, but what we have identified is that cooperative entrepreneurship learning that can be applied in pedagogy, in curriculum, and in governance of institutions. I've briefly mentioned that earlier. And basically what we know from the various practices we've looked at across Europe is that these different forms are not mutually exclusive. And basically also that the cooperative experience is not something that should happen only within the classroom and only at a certain moment in the year. And so what we work around is that the approach to cooperativism can be done by teaching about cooperatives, teaching for cooperation and cooperative development, and teaching through cooperation and cooperatives. And that those methods can overlap, and that essentially what differentiates that is the purpose. And I mean, I'm curious to maybe before me speaking about this, maybe you have thoughts about this, about the differences, or maybe you've come across some practices and that resonates. I don't know if anyone wants to react here. Because the teaching about, teaching for, and teaching through is something that comes quite often, I think. I don't know if something that you've talked about in Edu as well.
Yeah, it kind of EntreCompEdu was a bit different, because normally we would talk about teaching about for and through entrepreneurship, but EntreCompEdu we started it from the kind of perspective of the competencies, and then looked at the kind of, but it was very much through. The focus was on the practical engagement. I don't know what were people's opinions of EntreCompEdu that went through it. We didn't sort of focus on the traditional that because that sort of differentiation, but it was through.
Yeah, there's a comment by Kevin in the chat, which says, I often find that the definition of entrepreneurship is often misinterpreted by educators. The development of a cooperative approach is closely linked to language development and active participation. Yes, definitely. And I can speak, like I'm French, and in French, if you say entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship, it's really like people don't really associate it with anything else than creating business. So there's a lot of work to do around that, for sure. I don't know if you want to say something else, Kevin. Please unmute yourself if you want to comment a bit more.
Yeah, well, I teach in can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach in a bilingual school, so it's actually Irish and English. So we're constantly trying to develop methods to develop the second language in students. And as part of EntreComp, I firmly believe that the ability to express oneself, to develop a growth mindset, and to be able to work with others to develop a shared idea and to work towards that is really important. And oftentimes we can teach language in the context of given terminology and given verbs, but unless they're actually applying the learned language into a real life context, then that's something that really needs to be developed. And through that active engagement, through that cooperative in small work groups, or even through project-based learning, that's a huge area to develop those kind of skills.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of this in the module we've dedicated to teaching through cooperation and through cooperatives, and there's a lot of examples of practices. Wisdom is asking, does teaching through cooperation and cooperatives require a presence of actual cooperative organization to partner with to achieve learning outcomes? Not necessarily. I think what we've explored is that you can actually teaching about cooperation and cooperatives. It's great. It is enhanced if you bring the cooperatives into your environment, into the school or the university, or if you take the learners to a cooperatives. But teaching through, a lot of an obvious answer would be that, oh, we'll set up a cooperative with the students, but you don't necessarily have to do that. There are lots of practices around cooperation, group work, where students can work together to achieve the learning objectives. And of course, this will involve clear instructions and roles and maybe measures for learning objectives, but it's not necessarily creating a cooperative or bringing a cooperative in, but it's a great add-on. And what we would always advise is actually to liaise with the local cooperatives in the area of where you work, because that's the best way for also students to relate, right? I don't know, maybe Apua, you want to compliment from the UCOOP experience here, if you have any thoughts.
No, I think I agree with you that learning about would be, talking about what they are and just making visible, making aware that they exist and what they are about, and just more about information and visibility of cooperatives. But then learning for would be to teach and learn about setting up a cooperative. As a business or anything. And then through would be, I think, essentially developing cooperative identities, giving people opportunities to participate in cooperative relationships and institutions, wherever they are, in their own workplace or schools or beyond that. So I think through, for and about are more limited, but through has more scope of involving people.
It's that experiential aspect comes into the through, which is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Julie commented, I think a lot of young people naturally end up forming cooperatives in response to collaborative project work, but they don't know that's what it is. So we need to make sure that we teach about co-ops too. Very true. Yeah, very true. Now, in hindsight, I think I did go through this kind of teach through or learning through, but no one explicitly brought about the principles of cooperation. I think it's too bad. Yeah. Yeah.
And if I may, I have the same issue when I talk about associations. So
yeah.
But I'm in my area, I'm closer to vocational training, and but since I'm in the teaching with brewers, also there are many agricultural cooperatives. So, and also there are also breweries which are cooperatives. So people start to identify the model, and when we have entrepreneurs, try to find illustrations, which is then quite easy to imagine. But now when you think even of a co-working, it's also a form of cooperative to some extent. And it's, someone has mentioned it's how to open the mindset by illustrating someone, and then people will continue with that. So
yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah, well, that was just to spark a bit of a discussion as well. Have you ever applied or came across practices of cooperation education yourself? So good practices to share or challenges to share. We've touched upon this already, but maybe we can discuss this a little bit further. Maybe also, Ellen, to spark the conversation, could you tell us maybe a tiny bit about what your brother's cooperative does with schools?
Yeah, so my brother set up a cooperative in response to a sort of a community survey of what people wanted in the local area. And it's an energy cooperative developing, so he's developed a wind farm, 2 wind turbines on top of a mountain. And also he installs, he and the team obviously, they've installed the biggest installation of solar roof panels in Wales. And it's big, it's on top of a cycling stadium. So he goes into schools to really talk about how people can work together cooperatively to tackle climate change, and brings in the sort of the concept of being cooperative, people, the power of people, and when people come together, you can achieve anything. Because his cooperative, it's one of the biggest in Wales now, and they've raised something like £5 million for each cooperative, maybe 3 million for one, 5 million for the other. Wind farms are expensive, but from people, from cooperative members who are investing. And yes, it is an investment opportunity, but you can also just buy 1 share, which is then, you know, you're becoming a member. And in Belgium, where I live now, there's a lot of cooperative tradition as well. So you can join an energy cooperative, you can join a grape cooperative. It's a bit like, you know, in Italy, my friend from another organization is part of a wine cooperative, which I like the idea of. There's definitely benefits there. So yeah, but my brother's work is very interesting. I put the links in the chat, but the power of just people coming together to create change. And I think for me, I told my brother he was an entrepreneur. He never identified before that. And so I told him he was an entrepreneur, and then I enrolled him onto the Welsh Big Ideas Wales programme to tell his story as an entrepreneur to young people, as a cooperative entrepreneur, because I think it's really important that we share, that role models come from different backgrounds, and that we mainstream cooperatives and social economy entrepreneurs into the types of business model that you can take forward. But he also, you know, he had an idea, he made it happen. And he's also showed people, and including, he gives shares, this is the one, isn't it? He gives shares in the cooperative to children, to schools, so that they can play with that share effectively and look at how much energy it produces, how much money it makes, how much profit, you know, all of these sorts of things. So it's a learning experience. But he also shows them that with that share, they can have an impact, they can create change, you know, small change, but then with all the hundreds and thousands of people involved in the cooperative, that's big change. That's a massive amount of megawatts that is coming from wind or solar rather than oil or gas.
Yeah. It's quite impressive how engaged he is with local schools, actually. Well, they are with local schools. Yeah. We
haven't got so much time left, so
yeah, I think I can stop here and we can just wrap up really, or focus on having a conversation. Kevin, you're saying, I've worked along with Ashoka Changemakers, and we're currently reviewing the development of social entrepreneurship in a number of schools in Ireland. Great. We are currently developing skills associated with EntreComp to support disadvantaged areas. Wow, we want to follow that for sure.
We do, definitely. The other thing is there's a really nice organization. I haven't been in touch with them for a little while, but Social Innovators Ireland. Maybe you've come across them, Kevin. Again, just opening up that idea of social impact to children in schools.
Sorry, is it Social Innovators Ireland, is it? Or?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's check that one out.
There's a very good woman in charge whose name I'm going to get now. Young Social Innovators, that's what it's called. But they do some really, really nice stuff. Rachel Collier is the co-founder of, I'll put it into the chat, of Young Social Innovators. And they're engaging a lot of young people. I want to say mainly in the southwest, but I'm not sure. But in Ireland.
There's also Social Enterprise Ireland, quite active, at least at European level. They're very active. I don't know if they have any programs with young people or around education, but maybe worth checking.
But on the wider social economy work as well, Julie, you've got some actions going on with Enterprising Schools Scotland that link to these themes as well, no? And maybe others do too.
I'll put a wee link in the chat to a Social Enterprise Academy. They're based in Scotland, but they have worldwide presence as well. Their website's really interesting. They'll give you loads of case studies and things on there for educators and businesses. I'll put that on for you.
Anyone else got any resources that might be relevant? Obviously, you can also do the MOOC, and it is really, it's a good quality MOOC, and there's a lot of stuff in there. You know, there's you might recognize some of the guiding principles of entrepreneurial learning if you've been through EntreCompEdu, and because it really did focus on trying to, you know, teach through and then look at how do we bring the kind of pedagogical focus of EntreCompEdu to place the lens onto cooperative actions, you know, for young people and others. 2012 was the UN Year of Cooperatives. Where are we? It's a good question. Do you know, 2009 was the European Year of Creativity. I remember I was with my first job in the Commission at the time, and we're still working. We're still working, Jan. That's it. We're not out of a job yet.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. But just one more word about the MOOC itself. Is not a very heavy, long MOOC, so you can it's very user friendly, I should say. So I would really encourage, and it's available in English, in Spanish, and in Italian entirely. So if you want to spread it, go ahead.
And obviously we have Apurwa with us, and a big shout out to Apurwa, who's been instrumental in developing the content behind UCoop. Is now about to leave Bantony, sadly, but is going on to work on a great global education project with the university in Finland. So we are very happy for her. So, but done some great work while you've been with us.
Thank you, Ellen. It was a pleasure working on UCoop. I learned a lot myself because I was very new to the sector. I knew very little about cooperatives, but when I did, it was worth.
Nice. Okay, nice.
So any other questions before perhaps we call it an evening? Can we put a last link to the UCoop program?
Done.
And of course, we do have some new people with us that haven't joined us at the cafe before. So please, if you want to stay in touch with what's happening in the EntreCompEduCafé, but also in the wider kind of community around actions related to EntreComp, you can go to entrecomp.com and sign up there. We are slowly but surely developing the online community. And trying to build the links. It's still early stages. Candice, who is also here, is doing an awful lot of work on that, and Megan. But we're really building that, and we'd love to have you join us.